They say animals feel what we don't. But what if a dog kept barking every night at an empty grave? What if the town called it madness until they dug? What if that bark was a cry for justice, a whisper from the dead? This is not just a story of a dog. It's a story of a secret, of a girl who vanished, and a grave no one knew existed, except him. Willow Creek looked like a perfect town. White fences, Sunday prayers, lemonade on the porch, but beneath its calm face lay secrets. 10 years ago, Emily Jackson, a bright 16-year-old girl, vanished after a summer party. No blood, no scream, just gone. Her mother, Martha, begged for answers. The town gave her silence. The case went cold. The family fell apart. Only one person kept visiting the woods behind the cemetery, and she never told anyone why. Her name was Claire Whitmore, a widow, and Emily's godmother. After Claire's sudden death, heart failure, they said, her dog, Max, was taken in by a neighbor, Roy Carter. A quiet Vietnam veteran, Roy didn't talk much, but he noticed everything, and he noticed something strange. Every night, at exactly 12:17 a.m., Max would scratch at the door. He'd run to the cemetery, not to Claire's grave, but to a grassy, unmarked spot behind an old oak tree. There, he would bark, long, deep, mournful barks. Sometimes he'd whimper. Sometimes he'd dig, every night, same time, same place, but every Wednesday night, Max stayed home, silent. Rumors still haunted Willow Creek. Some said Emily ran away. Others whispered about a man, a doctor, who had gotten too close. But no one dared speak his name aloud. Dr. Vernon Kay. He was respected, powerful. But Claire knew something. Before her death, she had started visiting Emily's mother again. She told her cryptic things. The truth is under our feet. He walks among us still. Watch the dog. He remembers. After Claire's funeral, Martha noticed something chilling. Claire had asked to be buried far from her husband, in the same row as Emily's empty grave. Why? One stormy night, Roy followed Max to the cemetery. Armed with a flashlight and a shovel, he watched the dog sniff, circle, and finally lie flat. Eyes locked on a patch of dirt. Roy dug, 4 feet down, just roots. Then, something cold. Cloth, hair, a chain, and then bones. Police were called. Within days, DNA confirmed it. Emily Jackson had been found, right where Max barked, right where Claire visited in secret, right where no one ever looked. The forensics team found trauma to the skull and a bracelet engraved EJ. She hadn't run away. She had been murdered, buried in the open, hidden in plain sight, and the autopsy showed something darker. Her body had been preserved, refrigerated, buried years after she disappeared, which meant someone had kept her for years before laying her to rest. A sick ritual or a cover-up. Roy told detectives only one person in this town had that kind of cold storage. Dr. Vernon Kay, a charming man with a perfect record. He had treated Claire's husband, treated Emily. He owned a secluded property with an old meat freezer. When questioned, he smiled, said Claire was lonely and delusional. But Martha wasn't. Done. She showed the police a torn page from Claire's journal, delivered anonymously after her death. I saw him load the bundle. It was her. I know it. I saw the hair, the skin. I saw his eyes when he saw me. That's why I will die too. Claire knew what happened, and that's why she died. Police searched Vernon's old freezer, sold to a junk dealer months ago with court orders and luck. They recovered it. Traces of Emily's DNA were found. Microscopic hair strands, flesh residue, and blood beneath the lining. Dr. Vernon Kay was arrested. Max watched from Roy's porch as the town's favorite man was taken away. The people of Willow Creek finally believed the dog. The trial was brutal. Vernon claimed innocence, blamed Claire, blamed Roy, blamed the media. But he couldn't explain the freezer or the bracelet or the witness that never barked without a reason. The prosecution called Max a guardian of the grave. The jury called Vernon guilty. After the trial, Max was invited to Emily's reburial. He didn't bark. He just lay quietly beside her coffin. He was given a medal, a ceremony, a story in the local paper. The dog that barked at the empty grave. But Roy never let anyone forget. Max wasn't special. He was just loyal, and loyalty remembers. Justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears fur. Sometimes it waits in silence. Sometimes it barks, again and again, until someone listens. Before Vernon Kay was a doctor, before the crisp white coats and golden cufflinks, he was just a boy from nowhere. He grew up in a cabin not far from Willow Creek, the same one where they later found the freezer. No siblings. A distant father, a mother who disappeared when he was 8. He got good grades, perfect manners, always helpful, always polite, too polite. Records later uncovered after the trial showed disturbing signs. A missing cat in 7th grade, a classmate who transferred schools after a basement incident no one talked about, and a counselor's note. Vernon mimics emotion, doesn't feel it. But he was smart, clean, polished. He knew how to hide in plain sight. The summer Emily disappeared, Vernon had treated her for a minor injury, twisted ankle during soccer. He offered to drive her home once. Just once. Emily told her mom it was weird. He looked at me too long, but she didn't push it. He was Dr. K, respected, trusted. Then came the party, then came the disappearance. Now, years later, text messages recovered from Claire's old phone, encrypted and stored on a forgotten backup drive, told a darker story. Claire had messaged someone repeatedly. "You said you saw him at the cabin. Did you tell the police?" She never made it home. Did he ever bring her back? No reply. The number belonged to Vernon's former nurse, who had vanished 2 months after Emily. Her body was never found. After the trial, after the cameras, and applause faded, Roy found himself alone more than ever. He kept Max's collar on the mantel, polished it every Sunday. But something ate at him. One night he sat with a glass of scotch and whispered, "I should have done more." He remembered seeing Vernon late at night near the woods, years ago. He remembered the girl's poster peeling from the diner window. He remembered Claire looking tired, scared, whispering something as she passed him in church. "He still walks among us." Roy hadn't listened then. Max did. And Roy would spend the rest of his life honoring that. 3 years after the trial, Martha received a from Vernon, neatly handwritten, clinical, cold. "I understand you may seek closure. I am open to discussing the case in person should you wish clarity." She burned it, but she went. Behind glass, Vernon looked older, still calm, still too composed. "You came," he said, smiling. "Closure?" Martha leaned forward. Her voice didn't shake. "I came to see what evil looks like when it's forgotten by the world." Vernon blinked. "You think me evil?" "No," she said. "Evil acts. You watched, and watched, and watched, until she couldn't scream anymore." He laughed, soft, brittle. "You know, the dog always stared at me, like he knew." Martha stood. "He did," and she left. Never returned. 2 years after Max's death, a woman from Michigan contacted Martha. Her aunt had purchased furniture at a storage auction in Willow Creek. Inside a hidden drawer of Claire's old dresser was a bundle of pages wrapped in cloth. Claire's, full journal. The pages were haunting. She wrote of Vernon's obsession, his visits to her home, his questions about Emily's habits, her schedule, her perfume. One page read, "I fear he took her. I know it in my gut, but I have no proof. I'm just a grieving old woman to them. They won't listen. Only Max listens now." Another, "If I die, it will be because I saw too much, because I looked when others turned away." The final page. Emily was light, pure. He wanted to own that, to silence it. But you can't kill light forever. It finds its way, even through the bark of a dog. A year after Max died, Roy visited a dog shelter just outside of town. A young mutt, part shepherd, part lab, rushed up to him. She sat at his feet and stared. Silent, Roy smiled. "You're quiet like he was." He adopted her, named her Echo, and Echo followed him everywhere, into town, into the woods, into the quiet of old age. Some nights Roy thought he saw Max in her eyes. Other nights he'd whisper to her as she lay beside the porch rail, "If I go before you, bark for me too." It was a cold October morning when Roy didn't come out for coffee. The neighbors noticed. That day there was only silence. When they entered his home, they found him in his chair, peaceful, arms crossed, Max's collar resting on his chest. Like a medal, a photo album opened beside him. On the first page, Max and Roy in the snow. On the last, Emily's reburial, Max lying beside her. Echo lay at his feet, unmoving, watching. She didn't whimper, she didn't bark. She just stayed, for hours, until the ambulance came. Roy left no will, just a note. "If anyone wonders what mattered in my life, it was loyalty. A girl I never knew. A woman the world ignored. And a dog who never gave up. I didn't solve a murder. I just listened. The rest, Max did." They buried him beside Max and Claire. A small gravestone, no fancy words. Just this: he listened. When the world didn't, Echo was taken in by a young woman named Jamie, a volunteer from Voices Unheard. She trained Echo to visit schools, helping kids understand what empathy looked like, through fur and eyes that knew pain. Echo sat beside children during court. Testimonies. She nudged grieving mothers in support groups. She waited at doors of shelters. And never barked unless something was wrong, just like Max. One winter day, Echo stopped at a cemetery gate. Jamie followed her to a grave, Emily's. Echo lay down and whimpered once, soft, honest, and then silence. A decade after the trial, a filmmaker finally convinced Martha to tell the whole story. She agreed, but only if it wasn't about Vernon Kay. "It's not his story," she said. It never was. The documentary was called The Bark That Broke the Silence. It won awards. But what mattered most to Martha was a letter she received from a man in Colorado. "My daughter vanished 3 years ago. No one believed me. But your story gave me hope. I kept looking. And this week, we found her, alive. Please tell Max. Thank you." Years later, a young boy wandered off during a family picnic near the cemetery. They found him sitting beneath the old oak tree, beside the original unmarked patch where Max once barked. He was smiling. "Who were you talking to?" his mother asked. He pointed to the dirt. "The dog," he said. "The one who doesn't talk, but watches. Willow Creek isn't perfect, no town is, but it remembers now, remembers the cost of silence. The ache of a mother's unanswered prayers. It teaches kids about listening, not just with ears, but with the heart." Every spring, during the festival, a parade is held in memory of Max, Claire, and Emily. At the front, a banner reads, "Because of a bark, the truth was heard." Echo passed peacefully in Jamie's arms years later. She was buried beside Max and Roy. A plaque was added above them. Some voices are silent, some are fur, but all can be heard if we choose to listen. Max's collar sits in a glass case. At the town museum, children press their hands to the glass and whisper, "He saved her." And sometimes, on quiet nights, parents swear they hear a distant bark carried on the wind, not a warning, not a cry, but a whisper. I remember. They say dogs bark at things we can't see. They say they sense ghosts, guilt, grief. They say animals feel what we don't. But sometimes, they know what we choose to forget. This wasn't just a story of a girl who vanished, or a woman who saw too much, or a man who listened too late. It was a story of truth that refused to stay buried, of justice that wore fur, of loyalty that echoed through a graveyard, and of a bark, one bark, that never gave up until they dug.